Hey guys, welcome to another episode of All Bass Creations Effects Tutorials, Demos, and Review. So, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Today, we're going to be building some bass synths using things like the Enzo X, MXR bass synth, and the Future Impact. And we're going to try to build something relatively similar with all of them. So, here we got to have a few guidelines here. We're going to do, unfortunately with the MXR bass synth, you can't choose your separate waveforms, like have a saw and a square wave at the same time. But typically, a lot of bass synths are built that way, with a saw and a square wave, or, sometimes it is. A lot of times it is a saw and a saw, or a couple square waves, or a couple triangles together, sine waves, different things like that. So we're going to get into how we even do this stuff, right? So let me make sure we up and running here. Yep, we good. So let's start with the Enzo X. We're going to just start with, if you have any effects on, you want to turn all that stuff off. So even the filter, when you go to the filter, you want to use a low pass filter. We're going to turn it all the way up, and we'll use a negative 24 dB filter. On here it's called ladder. The state variable filter is the 12 dB, and it's also a twin filter on here. But we're going to run with that, turn the resonance all the way down, turn the filter envelope to 0, and open the filter level all the way up and turn the sustain time all the way as long as possible. You don't need any attack or decay just yet. And same thing for the amp envelope. We're just gonna all sustain and maximum sustain time as well. And everything else is off. So you should have something similar to that. That's a saw wave. So we're going to start with just familiarizing ourselves with the different waveforms, right? So we're going to start with the saw wave, which is that nice classic buzzy sound. Right? So from here, we can choose to add another waveform. So we can, typically, we would be stacking these. So let's go with something basic like a 2 saw waves. And that's why we use 2 of them. It fattens it up a lot. So that's always a nice place to start. We can play with the octaves as well. Sometimes we might shift that. It's already getting into that bass territory right there. So just by having 2 saw waves, one in unison with the actual pitch we're playing, and then one an octave down, gets you that type of sound. Now, we're going to hop over to the filter section. So one of the main things to realize is that these are subtractive synths. So we'll be taking waveforms like that, and we'll be taking frequencies pretty much out with the frequency cutoff at the moment. Thank you. I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah, it took me a long time to get that stream together. They was on me about it. Get it together. It's the audio. It's this. But thank you. I appreciate your notice, the setup. So So from here, we can bring this down. See a little different sound there starting to come and be shaped up, right? So now we can choose to add some actual modulation to the filter by using the filter envelope amount, right? And then that's going to allow the ADSR. This pretty much determines how much the ADSR affects the filter, right? Thank you. I appreciate that. So now with something like the Enzo X and the MXR bass synth, you have positive and a negative amount of filter envelope amount, right? So when it's in the positive, it's going to allow the filter to go above the frequency cutoff, and then when it comes back, it'll, pretty much rest at that frequency. So to kind of demonstrate that, we're going to need to do some shaping with the ADSR. So we already got the bottom part of our sound where we want it with the frequency cutoff. So now we're going to just start shaping the envelope of the actual filter. So we can have the attack time, right? Let's make this a little bit more dramatic for you guys. We're going to add some resonance. And as you can notice, the further I open up this filter envelope, the further it goes above that frequency cutoff. It can go up a little bit. And if it's in the negative, it'll go below it. And now this becomes the bottom, the depth of the filter. So now when it's in the negative, it'll sweep from the filter cutoff down. So in a situation like that, instead of, I actually have my filter cutoff frequency around 420, somewhere around there, 450, 420. But if I bring it up to now that I'm have a negative filter envelope amount, it goes below it. So now how much it goes below is determined by the amount. So I can, or I can bring down the frequency amount of cutoff. And now it opens up. So from here, we can decide how much attack, how much decay, where we want that filter to sustain that, and if we need some release as well. Yeah, but before we even do that, let me tell you about the amp envelope. And this is pretty much the thing that shapes the actual oscillator sound. So I'm going to turn off that free filter envelope. Open this filter back up. So I can have that sound fade in with the attack time. I can have it immediately do an attack and then decay down to a certain sustain level volume. So notice that drop in volume there. Let's bring it all the way down. So if we don't have any sustain, decay, no attack, no release. I can have it do a really slow decay. And then depending on where I have the sustain level is where it'll rest at, as long as I'm holding it. So, and then you can also control the sustain time as well on here. That's not all ADSRs don't always have a sustain time, but Enzo X is amazing in that way. And then you have the release. So after I release the note, how long does it take to let go, release? So if I wanted that bouncier type sound, right? So this is all just shaping the oscillator volume, you know, letting it vary in volume to add a little bit more expressiveness to it and allow you to do a lot more with the actual signal, you know, the oscillator, so they don't just sound like just flat out. That has a lot more character even before you even add the filter, right? So we're not going to take any, but for classic bass synths, you typically, a lot of them, especially the ones people love to emulate, you just pretty much need no attack, no decay, all sustain, maximum sustain time, no release. Which gets you back to your classic bass synth sound there. All right, so now we're going to put that filter envelope amount, let's put it around 60. We're going to drop the filter cutoff to around 454. All right, so now we got a nice solid bass sound. You don't want to overdo it with the resonance either, because the more resonance, the less bass, you know. Once you get to a certain point, at least. So now let's add a little bit of attack, some decay, so right now we got right, and we have no sustain on the filter because we have the cutoff where we want it to cut off. Now, say I wanted it to cut off above where I have the frequency cutoff, then I would change the sustain level of the filter. So or I can have it not open at all if I have, you know, the maximum amount of sustain level on the filter envelope. What's going on? Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all stopping by, chiming in. Let me know if y'all got any questions, and, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, you guys understand where I'm at with it. So basically, you know, right now we're going through the envelopes and how the envelopes affect your sound. We're currently on the filter envelope, but we just went through the amp envelope. Again, the amp envelope just pretty much shapes the volume and, you know, the way the oscillator sounds by itself with varying in volume and things like that, while the filter envelope controls how the filter opens and closes, things like that. So we're already getting into that nice. So we bring that sustain level. And where the release on the filter ADSR comes in into play is when you have this release on the amp envelope, where you see that. Now we got some sustain, the release on the sound. If we open up this release here, it'll decay with the sound. If we use about the same release time, and see, literally I have the release of the volume, you know, the amp envelope, and the filter envelope release at the same exact time. But again, we typically don't need release right now. So we already pretty much got a nice bass synth sound right there. Bring that Now, say you want something a little bit heavier, you know. Let's see, bring up a little more resonance real quick. And the way you set up your modulation of the oscillator, right? The modulation of the oscillator on Enzo X is pretty much acts like, pretty much varies the pitch, right? Modulates the pitch up and down. No modulation. And then I just add in some depth. Then you got a modulation ramp and speed on here, so I can change that speed to be faster if I wanted it to, or slower. Then you can really hear what it's doing to the pitch. So you can use this to kind of create like the vibrato, classic synth type sound. You know, you can get those really expressive bends and vibrato in there. So we're leading, you know, I typically have that around 4 to 5 hertz, you know, on there. And usually my depth, I like, if I'm just gonna leave it on the sound and use because the mod ramp pretty much determines when that modulation starts. So if I wanted it to be immediate, I would have it at 0 seconds. But if I wanted to do more like a vocal vibrato, I can take some time here, and then you hear it kick in. So you actually get the actual note out before it goes to, you know, more of a vibrato type thing. So I like to use that, especially when I'm using my bass and I'm not using a MIDI controller, you know, because the, you know, Enzo X can, and all these pedals can be played with your bass. When I'm creating these sounds, I take that into account. So I typically like it around 1 to 2 seconds for the ramp. You know, 1 to 2 seconds from the time I play the note to when this effect kicks in, probably around 40. Typically around 40 to 60%, depending on, you know, what I'm doing. But I like it to have some time. And that way, it's kind of automatic. That way, anytime I'm holding like really long notes, I can do that. And I can also turn it on and off by assigning it to an expression pedal and the depth of the modulation to an expression pedal and all this other stuff. So you can have full control over that vibrato, that modulation of the oscillator in there, complete control over it in live settings. So let's go back and let's play around with a few waveform combinations. Or we might want that to be even darker. But we're actually I'm gonna go back to just using the oscillator real quick. So I'm gonna set this filter envelope to 0. Open the filter all the way back up. All right, so let's hear a saw and a triangle on the bottom. Nice fat bottom from triangles. Just so you guys can hear that by itself. So you can use that on the bottom of your bass synth. It's going to give you a nice big round bottom to it. And you don't have to go full blast every single time, because that's a sound, but this is also a sound too. And that kind of lets the bass be more forward. And all this is, we ain't even added the filter yet. You know, let me make sure I turn that resonance off. I think it's really important to try to get those oscillators to have that heavier sound, versus trying to get the filter to have that heavier sound. Is if you get those oscillators to feel heavy, the rest of it's going to be pretty easy. All right, you can put a square on the bottom. And as you see, much more content there. Yes, you can both of these the mod for the oscillator, which is this is controlling. You can assign that to an expression pedal. You can assign it to the hold modifier. If you don't have an hold expression pedal, you can have it. You can change the ramp, the time in which I showed you a few seconds ago. You can assign it to an LFO if you would like to, or you can assign it to the envelope as well, which is like the input of your sound. So, being triggered by the input of your bass sound. So that's the cool thing. And majority of stuff that you want to control, assign to stuff, you can control it really easily. You can assign up to 6 different things to the expression pedal by itself, or 7 things to the LFO A or B. It's because it's 2 of those. You can assign it to the random, the SNH, sampling hole, which is like a random generator. Have it triggered by the envelope of your sound, the whole modifier button here. You can have it set it to a 16, sequencer, which has 16 steps. So, what's going on, bro? Appreciate you. Appreciate you. All the usual suspects starting to show up. Appreciate y'all. We just going over how to make some bass synths from scratch. So these little things like this, before you even get to the filter, can make a huge difference. Now, say we wanted a saw and a triangle. So I put the triangle on top and the saw and the square wave on bottom. And by the way, this C down here, it would be C on my E string. So that's part of the reason why I'm playing right here a lot. And I don't actually shift the keyboard when I'm doing this. This is in, no octave 0, pretty much. So this just allows me to keep the bass synth sounding the same between me playing the keys and me playing my actual bass. But yeah, so different waveform combinations give you different things. Here's a square and a square. So these are the super important, like, when it comes to making your bass sound. Like, as you can see, this is what you're primarily working with. It's the same as starting with, a good bass, and good technique when you're playing the bass. You can't expect to get a good sound out afterwards if you didn't spend some time getting those oscillators to sound nice and heavy. We talking about bass synth here. So typically different combinations of things work well. This is that classic saw and square. Now you got things like detune, so I can detune that second. I can add some, pulse width modulation. That's simply by detuning the octave down a bit, the second oscillator. And I can also have the oscillator widths on here. So pretty much when it's a square wave, it is the width controls the size of the pulse. It's, what I'm saying? So if I wanted to really, let me just isolate it real quick. See how really small that wave oscillator form got? So that plays a role as well, because say you were using the square wave on top, and let's just go with a triangle on bottom real quick. The difference is going to be the triangle is when you add this oscillator width to it, it's going to start to become more and more square to eventually becomes a square wave. So I can have anywhere in between that. Say I just don't want that big subby sound, I can add a little something. And same thing happens with a saw wave. But it can be anywhere in between. So say you wanted to use a saw wave on, like a saw wave and a saw wave together. You can make that bottom one. So if you, like this, right, doesn't have much bass to it. Add some of that oscillator 2 width. And it starts to get a little fatter in there, you know. But you start to lose that saw wave texture. So that, I mean, it makes a huge difference. Let me see what we got here. Yeah, I can try to do that in this video. It's not hard to do. It's not hard to do at all. So one thing I can do, let's see, so I mean, I'm gonna get to that. I ain't don't let me forget. I'm gonna assign that modulation, the pitch bend to the expression pedal. What I might do is I can do it 2 ways. I can have them, really I don't need to assign the modulation because I have it with the ramp time. So like if I have it set already, it's gonna kick in whenever. So that's not something you really have to trigger. It's already, you just build it into the preset with the in our modulation section on here. So let's give it. So anytime I'm just holding a note, it's gonna add that vibrato, that modulation, but not for 2.48 seconds. Right, because you typically so it just makes your life a lot easier not having to trigger it actually. But you can, and I'll show you how. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this into a quick saw and square on the bottom. so we're gonna work from there. Trying to decide if I want to add some positive modulation. Come back over to the filter. I like 421, actually, that works. Nice. So you wanted a darker bass synth? And this is where the filter becomes super, super important, because I like to have it, if you want it a little brighter, with that filter sweet, hitting that sweet spot. So, bam, you got that. And if you wanted to make that more resonant, you could. So yeah, all these is just options. Let it sit a little darker, bring that sustain of the filter down. So from here, say you know you were good with that. We ain't gonna, it'd be good, but you can always come back to the filter, envelope them out, open it up some more. So luckily on the Enzo X, you got a ton of effects modules on here, drives. You got a good amount of filters and different things like that. And you also have modulations and delay and reverb on here. So if you want to add any of that stuff, it's also available. But just for 1 second, I want to change this filter just so you guys can hear it. That's the ladder. This is the state variable, so this is a less aggressive filter. Then you also got the twin filter in here. So changing the filter changes everything with a bass synth. You know what I'm saying? If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button. I definitely appreciate all y'all hanging out with me. Make sure y'all hitting them reactions and let me see what's make sure we got everything clean here. But yeah, so from here, say we was good with that, we can come to the drive section. We got tube, transistor, op amp, and bit crusher in this section. What's going on? Appreciate you. You also got volume pedal if you wanted to do some panning stuff. And the way you would do that is just assign, you know, put this on the volume pedal. I forgot this is in the drive section. There's also this volume pedal here. You put that, you change the balance. The balance is actually the what's panning at. So at 0, it's in the center, and then you can go either left or right. You also got a compressor. No compression. Heavy compression. And we got the tube drives. What's going on, Porch Base? Appreciate y'all. All the usual suspects popping in. Appreciate it a lot. So the tube accentuates the highs. While the transistor is more that mid-range. Actually, sorry, I got that wrong. The tube is more the mid-range. The transistor is the highs. More emphasis on the highs. While the op amp is giving you a little bit more body on your bass. So I would recommend the op amp. And I typically keep that gain on that pretty low. Bring up the volume. So right there, you know, already made it juicier. You know. You also got the bit crusher, which goes up to 32 bits, which is insane. Goes down to 1 bit. Just stupid. That's just stupid. Just 1 bit. I'm just increasing the bits. Actually like 12 bits. Just completely obliterated. Only thing I want them to add to this drive, this bit crusher part of the section, is a mix knob. If they could on an update, that'd be great. Awesome. I'm glad you updated that joint. Yeah, the update on there. We're gonna get to the Future Impact as well. And the MXR bass synth. So don't worry. It's just the Enzo X, the signal, you know, it's a lot that you can do with it. So That's why we right here. Plus, it's the easiest to edit on out of all of them, to be honest. Is you don't have to remember, like here you got to remember secondary functions. You can't see where things are. You can see everything. It's so much information that you can see here. So we're going to put this drive on op amp. Bring that resonance down. So you got all that type of action going on there. All right, and you can come over to the ambient section if you wanted to add some reverb. So you want a smaller room. Cool thing about the ambient section as well, and the reverbs they give you, you can control how much highs and lows, you know, like almost like a separate EQ for just the reverb. You also got full stereo echo. All right, so if you don't need it, you can leave it off. And of course, you can add some chorus to that in the modulation section. And the general rule I go with for chorus is, in most modulations, is slower speed, higher depth, faster speed, just a lot less depth. Like I'm talking about, like I can push the depth when it's slow to 100, but when it's fast, it's probably gonna be around 25, 30. See what we got here. Yeah, the drive does a lot to it, you know, color it and make sure that it sounds, you know, that it's just pretty much a preamp section. You know, in the Mercury X, they have the same drives except for the bit crusher, and they call it a preamp section. So it's because those are what a lot of people use for preamps: tubes, op amp, transistor. So awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I try my best to give you guys good information, not just leave you, you know, in the dark. You guys take the time to watch. I want you guys to actually get something out of it, you know. So adding some chorus can definitely widen your sound. Some nice flanger. And so, like, when you turn the speed off, the depth becomes like it's like a notch filter. You get those nice metallic sounds. So you just can do weird stuff with flangers. But again, slow speed, you can push that depth a lot more. Flanger, phaser. Oh, it's good. We already got vibrato, but it's vibrato on here. So even if you don't do it in the depth section of the Enzo X, you can add separate vibrato here as well. Use it in a whole different way. You got phaser. Of course, you got mix knobs for all this stuff, just to add a little more bottom. If you want one really phased up bass, see what we got here. No, the flanger, it can't track pitch, but what you can do is have it. If you want to use it like a sweeping notch filter, you can take that depth, turn the speed off, take the depth and assign it to one of the LFOs or the pitch or any of the modifiers in there. Yeah, ring modulator. And you get sine and a square. Square is a lot more aggressive. Versus the sine wave. So I suppose you could probably, if you put those to exact values, you could probably and set like your expression pedal or MIDI controllers to quantize the pitches you probably could play that ring modulator and that flanger like that. Then just take some experimental. Because if you can do this and change the pitch. Now it's like harmony. Probably can tune it like that. Yeah, you can. That's what I said. You probably it doesn't have it's not tracking the pitch necessarily, but you can definitely get it in tune with a few, changing that. Once you learn the values that you needed. So, all right, let's do one more thing before we go on. Someone asked how they could have basically keyboard control, keyboard like pitch bend and things like that. I believe already. A lot of my bass synths on here already have set up in this way, as a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it. Let me see. So there's actually two ways you can do this on the Enzo X. The first way I'm going to show you is through the hold modifier. And I'm going to be triggering the hold modifier on the floor. So from here, we're going to assign this to the pitch of the oscillators. Let's see what we got. Oh, got to plug it in. Let me check the tuning real quick. Future Impact and the Enzo X also both have tuners. So, and trust and believe, they are picky about you being in tune. That's actually one of the main things that helps it track well. Never hurts to have tuners on your board, I tell you that much. And the Future Impact one is pretty good too. It's very simple. It's like either sharp or flat or it's in tune. Like you ain't gonna get much more information than that. All right. What else? I got something else on. Oh. So I want this to go up in pitch, so I'm going to go over to the oscillators and I'm going to change that. I'm going to pretty much raise this whole thing up an octave. it to the hold modifier. Easy way. Because I don't want it to go, I think that should be around 66. Typically, you know, you got to do a little math here. So say I don't want it to go all the way up. So there's your pitch bend right there. There's your pitch bend. Technically, if I wanted that when I did the pitch bend to have more modulation depth to it, could do that as well. But that's typically where I would have it. See how it sustains first? See, that's me pressing the button there. Now, if I wanted to assign it to the hold modifier, that modulation we was talking about in the oscillator section, you can do that as well. And we'll set that to the hold. You gotta change it from the expression pedal to hold, and we'll put that at let's say we're keeping that at a we can do that too. Let me change that the way that sounds. I don't like how that is. I like around 4. And there it works. So I'm gonna have it set so now you can also have it jump a full octave or something, but right there I just got it set for just a whole step, just like the pitch bend is. But only thing is when I have that hold modifier being triggered by the same thing as the pitch bend, so I don't actually have to have it separate. And if I wanted it to do it a slower pitch bend, and I'm gonna show you how to assign it to the expression pedal as well. But if I wanted a slower pitch bend, I could go to the whole modifier section and change the time that it takes. And same thing, when I let go of the switch, I can have that so it takes a long time to go back. And just to get a little bit more extreme here, so you can really hear the pitch. Right? Let's bring this up to about 60. So now you actually got keyboard control. You can change the time. Now we can also do this with the expression pedal, right? So we'll take that off of the whole modifier there. We're going to switch the source to expression pedal for the mod depth. Then we're going to take another one and assign it to the pitch. So in this case, we need values 60, 66%, and 100%. Then let me make sure my expression pedal is set for that. I think that's set for the whole modifier at the moment. But let me change this. Where is it? Let's use this. We're gonna add, what is the whole modifier? Give me 1 second. Need the expression pedal CC. Keep it in my little notes right here. Expression pedal is CC4. Matter of fact, I might not even have to do it. I think that I already saw that one. CC4. There we go. I can also do things like so I can do octave jumps. I can do, actually I can, I think I can do the whole, I think it's up to 3 octaves, you know, that you can do with the sweeps and stuff. So that's why I always tell you guys that the Enzo X is amazing, because even when you know, this is also possible with the Future Impact, but with a lot more hassle in the routing and everything else. You saw how easy it was for me to switch that from the whole modifier to the expression pedal. So now you can hear that modulation kicking in, just like there. And it even works when you're playing keys. So I don't really need it that extreme. You know, that's a whole octave. Let me see some. So, yeah, essentially having keyboard control, and that's all was done through MIDI. Of course, you can attach a expression pedal through the expression jack in the back, or you already have the whole modifier switch here. So, yeah, it's very much possible to have keyboard control of these synth sounds on the Enzo X without ever having a keyboard there. As a matter of fact, even with a keyboard, you still would like using the MIDI controllers and stuff like that, or expression pedals and foot switches, definitely will still benefit you. So definitely check that out. All right, cool. Now we up off the Enzo X. We're moving on to the MXR bass synth. Extremely loud pedal. You can change the output gain right here by holding the shape button and turning the sub mix. Right, so, all right. So we're gonna start with the, make sure ain't no glide on here either. Right, so that's a square oscillator. Well, let's talk about this. How do you even get to just the oscillator sound on here? So you have to turn the envelope all the way to the left. So that takes the amp envelope, the filter envelope amount, and all that stuff out of the equation. Open the filter cutoff all the way open. You want to turn the synth, the mix knob all the way to the left. All the way to the right. So completely just this oscillator. And for now, we have no sub oscillator mixed in, and no resonance, and no mods, no modulation, as well as you might have to turn the LFO off of the filter as well by holding voice and turning the mod knob. So again, it's just important to familiarize yourself with the sound of the actual oscillators so you can then better manipulate them with the filter, because there's, again, a subtractive synth. It's just a really small one, you know? And it is a good pedal. I tell people all the time is, listen, I don't pick between pedals I like. I get what I like when I can. And I ain't always got it, so it ain't like I can always just run and get it either. But it's, you know, if I really want something, I'm not gonna just get something else to settle. And if I want both of them, then I'll work and try to get both of them. You know. But all right, let's rock and roll. So that's the square wave, triangle. Instantly a lot more bass. And we also have the saw. A lot less bass there. So that's the waveform. The oscillator shape definitely makes a difference in your bass sound and how heavy the bass sound is going to be overall. Right? And we also have the octave down on here as well. So if we turn the sub mix all the way to the right, that's going to give us just the octave down. So this is the saw wave. Now, square wave. And you also have the triangle wave, just straight. That's where all your booty gonna come from right there. The triangle wave got some bottom on it. All right, and let's hear what the upper voice of these synth sounds like. So we'll turn the mix knob the sub mix all the way to the left, meaning it's just gonna be the upper the unison pitch oscillator for now. We're going to hit that voice button, and then we're going to hold the voice button and turn the mix knob all the way to the right. And that's going to give us just the upper voice. That's what it sounds like with the triangle. So that would be your saw wave, upper voice, and the square. All right, so now we can easily start to mix those three voices. We're just going to use two for now for this, this purposes. So we'll take that original octave there, and it also has a hold function, so you can sustain the synth note infinitely and play over it if you want to. We're gonna mix in that sub octave. Gonna go about half and half on that, or maybe even a little bit more towards the sub. So about 75% sub, 25%. So that gets a nice heavy sound on it. Check out these, that's a square, triangle. So if you wanted to make something really with a lot of resonance, the triangle wave might not be a bad option there, because it already doesn't have too much going on in the upper part of it, of the sound frequencies there. But it also has, you can stand to thin that bottom out just a little bit. You might even do a different ratio for the triangle. That's straight bottom right there. Saw. Again. All right, so we'll go with the square. All right, so on the MXR bass synth, you don't have a full ADSR, right? So, you know, the only thing you can really change is the attack, the A part. So basically you could fade in. So if you hold the voice button down and you turn the envelope button, now the sound fades in. All right, so we don't really need that much for a lot of bass synths. All right, and so now we can start to shape it with the filter cutoff. Bring that down. So, you know, I know in theory that feels good at times, but it's not going to really cut too well. Something like that. Nice round tone. We can start to introduce the envelope, but we will need to go and access the filter envelope amount on here. So we do that by holding the voice button, and above noon it's a positive filter envelope amount, and below noon is a negative, meaning, and what, again, all that means is when it's a positive filter amount, envelope filter amount, you know, filter envelope amount rather, means it's going to go above the frequency cutoff. So above wherever you set this to. So that, you know, and then the negative will go below that, you know, and then return. So ducking down, that's the negative one. Now, if I switch that to the positive, all I'm changing is the filter envelope amount right here. So, you know, that filter, again, is huge part, and one of my favorite parts of the MXR bass synth actually is that filter. That's what really sells it. Like, the oscillators aren't like as high quality as the Future Impact and the Enzo X, but the filter in there is really good. Like, and it really, you know, MXR is known for their filters, hence why I have the MXR bass filter over there, and they're also known for having good tracking and great tracking on this stuff. Is why, you know, I got a poly blue there. So, you know, knowing their history with filters and tracking, you know, I wasn't surprised that this pedal is as good as it is. And for the price, it's not bad at all. You know, for the price, you ain't nothing to really complain about. All right, so we also introduced the attack and decay for the filter. So we have like a midway there. So if I turn the envelope if I turn it all the way to the left here, literally turns the envelope off. So now wherever I have that filter cutoff set to is where the filter just gonna stay. So a nice stagnant filter, or static filter. But you start introducing, these are really quick attack and decay times. And you start getting the longer ones. verses, right? And then you also have resonance. And the resonance just emphasizes the frequencies that are being swept through, pretty much. And ultimately around the frequency cutoff. See, gets way less bassy, more lasery. So keeping the resonance reasonable. So now you got already in the territory of having a great bass synth sound there. So essentially, it's the same thing as we did on the Enzo X. Only difference is, it's just way less options. So it was a lot. The reason it took so long for me to explain the Enzo X is because I explained like almost the entire process, or even if you wanted to add things and stuff like that. And there's just so much you can do and so many possibilities in there. While this is that's pretty much the main controls that you have on the MXR bass synth. So it's way less. Now, if I wanted to add some chorus, I can come over here, do that in the mod. So if I wanted the filter to be on the LFO, I can hold down the voice knob. Now I'm gonna put the filter on the LFO. And you can have the filter envelope amount. Basically, you can have the filter envelope and the LFO going at the same time. And you can also have them separate. Turn the envelope off. So, very well thought out compact bass synth pedal. A lot of people, the reason I ended up with it, I had to get mine used, a couple months after they came out. And I really don't think they actually knew how to use it too much, because once I got my hands on it, I definitely, I was very impressed, and I had the Future Impact, the Enzo X before, and the C4 synth. I had a C4 synth right there. So I know quite a bit about all these pedals, so that the MXR bass synth can get some nasty stuff in there, So, again, you can add some chorus back up in there if you wanted to. You can mix the chorus and the filter, both of them. So now the chorus and the filter are moving at the same rate. So, you know, that's pretty much the gist of it there. Now, if you wanted to add the extra upper voice, you could, you know, but if you just want like a straightforward bass synth sound, like that's closer to keyboard type sounds, that's going to get you there. Now you add the octave up voice, and let's mix a bit of that in there. Just get some nasty bass sounds out of there, but you know you're gonna have to definitely make them yourself and understand how bass synths work. You can't just throw everything on at 100% and expect it's gonna work. You gotta really know what those different parts of the synth do, and that's another reason why I was impressed with the MXR bass synth. They managed to get just enough parameters in there. Like they just barely snuck it in there to get just the right amount of flexibility to do quite a few things. And I say that because I can take this same sound, switch wave shapes, and I don't typically, and this is the other reason too. I don't even typically hear the sounds from the MXR bass synth with a lot of people. I don't typically hear them have too much body like that. Like these, if you put it together this way, and really balance out, the different things that you may. Let me see something. I don't want my. Balance out the various voices, the 3 different voices, get a nice balance. See how that's nice and very bassy. So the thinnest out of them is definitely the saw wave, So that's something else to consider. All right, so let's open up the Future Impact. Oh, you also, before we go, we also have like noise. This is available on the Enzo X and the MXR bass synth and Future Impact, but you can add a little bit of noise to your sound, and that also can add some texture. So if I wanted to add noise, I hold down this voice, and now I can add some noise to the sound. No noise, just a smooth noise. It's also available on there and on the Future Impact, so don't worry. And again, just to recap what we've been doing so far, and you know, let me, matter of fact, real quick, let me switch this over to here and bring up Future Impact Editor. Cool. So now we got the Future Impact up here online. Sorry about the fan noise in the background, folks. So we'll start by listening to a few of these oscillator sounds in here. Future Impact and the Enzo X have some amazing oscillators. Like, they sound really good. I know it's like, how does a saw wave sound better than another saw wave? Trust, they can. They do. They sound different. Change this to the speed, the zero accuracy. Zero priority latency. All right, and then we have the square wave. So, square, triangle, all right. So, and of course we can transpose those up and down. So that's a triangle, octave down, square. And saw. And of course you can have them an octave up. So, bam. All right. And you can also mix these. So I'm going to put them back on unison. You can mix these in any combination that you would like. So, say I wanted all three waveforms at once, and it'll make its own custom wave. And this is all on one oscillator. This is why the Future Impact is amazing. Matter of fact, yeah, I'm gonna switch over to keys for this, make my life a little easier. But this is one of the really cool parts about the Enzo X and the Future Impact. You can do stuff like just use your keyboard when you're ready. You know, it's not a hassle or anything. See what's going on here. Channel 3. Set up this MIDI, should be set up already. Yep. MIDI set up. But I got this on. Oh, why is it not going through? Oh, that's because I'm not Let me change something real quick, folks. Give me 1 second. That's not it. That's it. No, not right now. No, not right now. All right, so I need this MIDI in to go to this MIDI out. And then should be getting some. I don't know why it's not letting me. Should be receiving on. Oh, it might be. I know what it might be. The fact that I don't have it on the. There we go. Think that. Here we go. Sorry about that. So I had to change the Future Impact back over to the synth input, basically MIDI input, and make sure that the software and everything is on the same channel. Here we go. Trying to figure out where that's coming from. There we go. I knew that wasn't the sound I was hearing. So here we go. All right, so saw wave. Square wave. Triangle. All right, we raise these up here. we can mix these as well if we wanted to, all on one VCO, one oscillator. You can just make your own custom oscillators this way. And so you got, or wave shapes. And you also got control over those different wave shapes. So you can control different aspects of the saw, the K10. So I'm going to have it fade in. And that's outside of the VCA right here, which is the amp envelope. Same thing we went through on the Enzo X, but just looks different, right? So this pretty much is the same as the oscillator section in the Enzo X, except for it has quite a few more controls over the individual. Well, not even quite a few more. A lot of this stuff you can actually do. Well, yeah, all of this stuff you pretty much can do with the Enzo X. That's crazy. I'm just realizing that. It just looks different here. Let's drop this down an octave because we're making bass synths. So besides that, we can come to the saw wave here. The square wave. The same as we were doing with the detune in there. And this is the same as the oscillator width in the Enzo X, the offset. Pulse wave. All right, so let's go mixing here. So we can actually leave this there. We'll start with a saw wave. Matter of fact, we're gonna just restart it all. Bam. It's actually a pretty quick process once you're used to it. If I know I need a saw wave, I can just come right here and get the saw wave. And if I want the square wave, I can come and add that down here. I can drop it the octave right here. I can also detune it. So if you want to get that going as well, I can sync these two. Without it. So we'll put this on the bottom here, actually. We'll make the first oscillator down an octave. Have this stay at unison pitch. And we'll put the square on oscillator 1 and the saw wave on oscillator 2. Now with these volume sliders at the end of the oscillator here, these total can, if you want to get in a fold over distortion, you have to make these combined. So the 52, the 44, and whatever else I would use down here, or just these two together, I would have to make it equal more than 127. So if I wanted to fold over distortion like that, see, so you can get right into that fold over distortion that way, just like a lot of the classic analog synths. This is why I'm telling you the Future Impact is amazing. If you haven't already hit that like button, make sure you subscribe. I definitely appreciate you, and check out the Patreon for all my preset packs. If you don't want to have to sit through doing all of this with the Future Impact, it's already available to you. Let me turn this back on performance mode. It's already available to you on the Patreon. So preset pack for the Future Impact, Enzo X, Mercury X, the C4 synth, as well as what else? Oh, the Zoom pedals, Zoom B6, MS60B Plus, and MS70 CDR Plus. Check all those out on the Patreon. And if you find this useful, hit that Cash App super chat. I definitely appreciate you a lot. So we get a nice oscillator sound this way, and we can actually turn this filter off if we wanted to. You see how it sounds. Raw oscillators. And you also got a bunch of different filters here. Notch filter, high pass filter, low pass, band pass filter, all that stuff. And you also can do a twin filter thing, because you got a second band pass frequency here that's always available to you to get that bass balls type of sound. Or like Pony from Pony by Genuine. All right, let's start yeah, that's a nice and we can do an octave up above that. You see how when you have these synced, it's like nice and smooth versus crunchy or texture when it's not. But we can come down here, add an octave up, bring these two down, and we can play. So now you got that type of sound. And that's just with 3 oscillators. And you still got a whole another oscillator you can do stuff with down here. But we'll go with 3 for now. But this is where you can also do like harmony here. Say I want to like, I'll just do it for the sake of it real quick. Where is it? 19. So you got 4 octaves up and 2 octaves down. That's crazy. And you can assign any of these sliders to these flexi controls up here, and then assign the flexi controls to whatever CC message you would like. And then you can control it with an expression pedal, just like I was doing with the Enzo X. So this is where the Future Impact, this is why I said it can do all the old vintage bass synth sounds, and it does them perfectly. You got so many options like that. Even having 4 octaves right there is insane. And then you got 4 oscillators to work with. Like, you can pretty much create any of those vintage bass synth sounds. I'm actually going to say that as something. Yes, my computer. And a lot of that is going to get filtered out, so it's not going to be so abrasive in your face, per se. All right, let's come over to the filter. Feel free to ask questions, or if you don't understand anything, feel free to chime in. That's about right, like that. Let's add a little bit of resonance. See, the more resonance, the less bottom you're gonna have on it. So, the more resonance. Add a little bit of this ADS. This is pretty much how much the filter envelope will interact with the filter, pretty much. So this is like your filter envelope amount on the bass synth or the Enzo X, while the accent is how much your dynamics when you're playing with your actual bass, how far. So basically this sets how far the ADSR goes above your frequency cutoff. This one. The accent further allows you to go even further beyond that by, you know, with your loudest note, like your highest dynamic note value, is when that would trigger. And the envelope follower is kind of based on just like your actual input, not the dynamic. So that's where the envelope follow versus the accent would be different. One's dynamic, one is actually just the actual envelope being triggered by your bass input. So a lot of times you'll use somewhat of a combination of these. And you also got pitch follow here, where it gets brighter as you go up and gets darker as you go down. All right, let's get this ADSR involved. So let's get this envelope section involved. So you can have it, first off, you can have it set to reset every time you play. Well, let's get, we'll start with the actual envelope a little bit. Add a little bit of tack to that filter. Again, if I wanted my sustain level here to go above where my filter cutoff, frequency cutoff right here is at, for the sustain, I can have it do that. And again, you got your release there as well. Same thing with this envelope. If I wanted the sound to fade in, attack. If I wanted to fade in, then decay down to 30% of the volume of the maximum volume. If I wanted that to be really quick, like and drop off, like swell in and drop off real fast, no decay. If I wanted it to swell in and just drop off slowly. Also, release if I wanted to be I'm just touching the key. I'm doing. So that's also an option. And in that case, you know, you can have the release time of the filter about the same. So options is really, the options are amazing. So since we don't need that, and if you wanted like more of a bass guitar type decay, and this is where this little slider here comes into play, because it's gonna, instead of when I'm playing a note, when I'm playing the next one, if they're connected, right, it doesn't re-trigger the envelope. But if I set this to reset, it re-triggers instead. So you got all of these different options here. That's the filters, of course. You can add some bandpass in there. So let's keep going. Now you got the LFO section right here. This will allow you to do the same thing as the mod depth and the oscillator modulation on the Enzo X. So if we set this around 4.8, we can set the delay when the LFO starts between when we playing a note, you know, when we first start a note. So equivalent to the mod ramp on the Enzo X. And this VCO means this is going, the LFO will be going to the modulation of the oscillators, excuse me. Meaning it's going to vary the pitch like a vibrato. Up and down, and then this slider goes to the filter. So if you wanted the LFO to be on the filter, has a delay, then he starts doing it, and he's good with the filter as well. we got a few more things we can do. Of course, we can run our actual bass sound with this. We got a harmonizer block down here. If you turn on this distortion slider here, you can have a reverse, like you can have the exact opposite of these envelope right here for the. So basically, if you wanted the say you wanted the lead guitar sound to fade into a synth sound, you would use this slider to do that. Essentially giving this harmony block here and distortion block the opposite of this. So instead of this looking like this, when that slider's on, all of them will look like this. The exact opposite. You see what I'm saying? So if one was like this, if the regular envelope was like this for the oscillators, using this slider here would give the harmonizer block the exact opposite. So I hope that makes sense. So it would essentially look like this. It wouldn't look like this, but it would essentially be this. So yeah, that's something else that is, you know, you gotta definitely understand to use. And you do have noise here with its own separate AD. Right, and that also does go through the filter. So bring that noise back down. Come down. So once we get that all set up, we also got portamento right here. We can add. You know, we can change that time. Just add a little bit. And the portamento time now works on your actual bass when it's doing pitch detection with your bass now. So another cool feature, you know, you can turn your MIDI out on and off. You can do that on the pedal as well. You can transpose, you know, the MIDI going out. If your keyboard's coming in an octave higher than you want it to, you come here and just drag this down an octave. And you set your pitch bend range here as well. So those are all your different options. You also can change the portamento to time or rate, you know, gate, trigger, always, or legato. You know, you can have it, you can change keyboard priority here. Is it the last note you played, or do you want it to stick with the first note you played, or which one is the loudest? You know, you can do all this type of stuff. All right, so we come up to the overdrive section. And I like to, even when I'm not going to add any drive, I like to use this the same as the op amp in here. But this is like a tube style overdrive, so it just adds a little bit of texture. Just a little bit of saturation. I can drive it if I wanted to. It's almost got like a key, like a hammer, like a slight bell sound in there from this up here, this 4-octave up oscillator there. Dong. You got your EQ here. Let's give it a little bit of bottom on it, around 100 and below. If I wanted it brighter or darker. Also, if I wanted to scoop anything out. So you can actually, you know, that's another way you can do like a notch filter effect. You can actually assign that EQ frequency for that mid thing there. See, for here, you slide that slider and to the flexi controls, and then you can even use like that notch filter type set thing there. But for the most part, that should be fine for the EQ. Definitely don't want to pull that out, but without it, with it, so. Yeah, try to give it a little bit of bottom on there. And of course you can come in there, chorus, delay, flanger, phaser. All of those are made out of delay and reverb. So, you know, you can make all of them here. You just have to know the actual, they have different delay times, so, you know, that matters. So yeah, by basically having different combinations of these things, you can, you know, create different effects. Okay, so yeah, that's essentially what you know have to work with here in the Future Impact. So just to recap everything from all the units, first start with as open of an oscillator as you can, meaning go to the frequency cutoff of the filter, open the filter cutoff completely open, take all the filter envelope amount out, or turn the filter envelope off in general, and turn any LFO that's on the filter off as well, and turn off any modulations, turn off the resonance, like is everything. Just the oscillators. Start there, get those to sound nice and fat and where you want those to go. Then the rest of it is way easier to get that nice, heavy, synth-based sound that we typically want out of something like this. So from there, you do a good amount of filter shaping. You remember frequency cutoff first, then start introducing the ADSR, and then you can, once you start getting that filter, you want to hear that filter sweep a little bit more, add some resonance in there, and like get that filter sweep where you want it, then back that resonance off. I recommend keeping the resonance low, probably 30% or less usually works out fine, for bass sounds. Low pass filter, of course. Then you also pay attention to your ADSR for your oscillators as well, which is going to determine how the volume comes across there. And then, add a little tube overdrive and EQ to the end of it. And bam, you got something good, And if you want some modulation to the oscillators on here, you could do that through the LFO section right here. And again, this delay is just the time it takes from when you play the note to when this LFO starts, so which is an independent LFO of, any of the other ones on here, so which is cool. And then you can also use that for the filter. So, all right, guys, that's all I'm gonna do for today. I definitely appreciate you hanging out with me. It's been amazing. You guys been very supportive, and I truly appreciate that. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure you subscribe. And make sure you share this with a friend that likes bass synth and bass pedals and pedal boards and bass gear in general. Check out Patreon for all my presets for the Future Impact, Enzo X, Mercury X, the C4 synth, the Zoom B6, MS70 CDR Plus, and MS60B Plus. And if you find this information useful and you want to help me out, hit that Cash App, Super Chat, or sign up for Patreon, $1, $5, and it helps the channel out every month. I greatly appreciate you guys. All right, I'll catch you guys later. This has been another episode of All Bass Creations, Effects, Tutorials, Demos, and Review. I am the Bass Nagus. Find me on all social media at the Bass Nagus, and I'll catch you later.